Next up is PILA PHARMA with the CEO Gustav H. Take it away.
Thank you, Philip. Very nice to be back here in Stockholm with red eye. Of course, it was torrential rain when we came this morning, so nice to see that things have improved a bit. But my name is Gustav H. I am the CEO of PILA PHARMA. I suppose some of you may know what we are about. I've presented here a couple of times in the last year. But in summary, we are developing a novel type of oral treatment for treatment of type 2 diabetes and obesity. So this is a clinical stage opportunity. We're currently, or at least until so far, we've conducted trials up to phase 2. So relatively late stage. But let's start off by just laying the ground for what is the reason what we are about. So of course, it goes without saying that diabetes and obesity are becoming more and more prevalent problems on a global stage. Of course, diabetes has for long been considered one of the most raging diseases that have really big implications on public health expenditures, and of course on the society, the society's level of well-being. Nowadays, we're also seeing obesity being classified more as a disease, and of course, there's strong ties between obesity and diabetes. In recent years, we've seen some really good products coming through to market in obesity specifically from Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly. I'm sure some of you have maybe heard those names before. They've come through with these new GLP-1 analogs, which are really good in terms of really reducing body weight in a very extreme manner. The problem with these products is that they're quite complicated to produce and scale and distribute. And so even though these guys are running at full capacity right now, and have managed to establish a market from $0 to $25 billion in 4 years, only 2% of the market is being addressed. So there's a huge opportunity in the market for players who can come up with new solutions that are scalable and distributable and, of course, accessible to patients. So largely that's what we hear in the industry now, that is transitioning towards oral therapy, so tablets. So we have the two big, almost want to call them the duopoly at the top. Here at Novo Nordisk and Eli Lilly, they're developing all sorts of new therapies, both as injectables, but also as oral therapies. But what is changing is that we're seeing a huge influx of companies, large and small, coming up with different solutions now. And what is particularly interesting, of course, as well, is to see that there's a lot of deal making happening in this space. I've tried to sort of pinpoint a few of the deals here with yellow and green tickers. It may be a little bit complicated to see, but it's just to showcase that there is active deal making out there. There is appetite, if we can say it like this, when it comes to obesity drugs, for these types of new projects coming through. And one of the particularly interesting things for us is that we see that there's now a transition towards oral therapy. So in the past, it used to be mostly injectable treatments coming through. These are very effective, but they're very difficult to produce and scale, like I mentioned before. So now we see that based on this report from earlier this year, 43% of all drugs in development now are actually oral. And whereas we see GLP-1, that was maybe the predominant one until a couple of years ago, that's the light blue one we see here, it's only listed at 20% now. And we see a ton of different new modalities coming through. Companies are assessing many different pathways to see if they can generate some sort of weight loss or if they can combine it with other types of drugs. So there's a lot of opportunism, I would almost call it, out there. Companies are actively looking for differentiated solutions. They're looking to maybe combine with their own if they already own a GLP-1 product. So that's very encouraging, and we see that by if we look at all the smaller bars, that there's a huge range of modalities coming through. Just in this year, two Danish companies you may not know or may not have heard about them have made quite large deals with two players that have not historically been in this space. And so for us, that's also indicative of a market that is moving beyond just the two big guys. We can definitely feel that when we go out. So once in a while, we go out to these partner conferences where we meet big pharma companies and tell them what we do and what we anticipate and what we're looking to assess. And they all find a lot more interest in us now because they can see that this is a very differentiated solution. They're all asking for body weight data. Understandably, we don't have that yet. We have some diabetes data to show them, but again, the market is also transitioning from diabetes drugs to sort of be encompassed by obesity drugs. So obesity drugs will be used for all. But this is just to show that there is some quite sizable upfront deals being made. Roche and Gruber, Roche and Zealand and Gruber and AbbVie here with $350 million and $1.6 billion separately, which is sort of just indicative of the appetite in the market. And this is for phase 1 drugs. So this is quite interesting to us. Now, we have some data to suggest that we, as a company, we're developing a TRPV1 inhibitor, as you may know. There's some data that gives us reason to believe that this is also effective in regulating body weight. So this is a drug, or this is a molecule that has previously been shown to reduce the body weight gain in a sucker rat model, as it's called. This is a very typical model to assess how drugs would potentially perform in the clinic. So what it has translated to has been that if you can decrease the amount of body weight put on in a rat study, you would effectively see a body weight decrease when you transfer it to humans. I have to declare that this is not our molecule, but it is one that is very sort of closely designed in the chemical structure. So it gives us reason to believe that there may be something that we could achieve here. But this is something that we are now, I would say, moving forward with, because we've proposed to the board that we would like to make a bet on assessment of obesity in this particular drug class. And this is just to showcase what that sort of plan could look like. This is very closely related to how the other companies have achieved deals of very big sizing. So it includes doing a preclinical study in rats, subsequently followed by phase 1A phase 1B/2A study in humans living with obesity, but not with other diseases. From what we understand, this could effectively be achieved in between 12 to 18 months. The rat study is, of course, the faster option, but we assess that if we are to get a deal based on obesity data, then we also need to have some human data to show for. Of course, if you can manage to get rat data in a short amount of time, you also have the opportunity to patent it quite early for the use in this disease. A little bit on the profiling of how we view it. Of course, nowadays you have the injectables and you have the tablets coming through. These are only the marketed drugs so far. So we have some injectable solutions down on the left, and we have one oral solution on the lower right. This is only for diabetes, but we anticipate that our solution would be quite different. So this is to show that many of these GLP-1 based products come with some side effects to the gastrointestinal system. So patients experience nausea, they experience diarrhea, constipation, etc. And we, because we target something completely different, do not anticipate that our molecule or our drug would actually have such side effects. So that's one thing where we are very different than them. Of course, being oral, this is a very scalable solution. It's a very simple synthesis chemically. We think this is something that could potentially be produced, scaled, distributed, stored to a very, very large degree, where you could actually make this an accessible option for patients globally, and not just for those who have the highest paying healthcare systems. The molecule we work with is a TRPV1 inhibitor, like I mentioned before. It's in a very stable oral formulation that is almost, I would almost call it indestructible in the sense that it doesn't degrade, it seems, over many years. We have a readout here on the right, which is basically showcasing that it is very, very stable over 5 years. There's almost no degradation. So that's very promising. And this molecule has been in 300 humans in the past. So we took it over as an asset that had already been explored in other diseases where it was found to be safe, but it had not been efficacious. That, of course, allowed us to take it over cheaper than we otherwise would have been. But it also meant that we had to sort of go to the clinic, and we wanted to position this in diabetes at the time. And so we have done two trials in type 2 diabetes where we've seen that it was actually quite safe And we've also seen signs of efficacy. And that's very promising because in the past trials, they have not seen signs of efficacy. So that's a good thing, we believe. TRPV1 is a sensor that's located on all your sensory nerves throughout the body. So it's not just a gut hormone you're playing at to sort of give signals to the brain that you don't need to eat anymore. We believe that we could potentially be having a full body effect by targeting this receptor in particular. The receptor is traditionally associated with regulation of pain and inflammation, but we have, of course, the desire to show that it may also have a role to play in more metabolic conditions. So we believe that there's something to explore in regards to. Of course, we're still lacking a lot of mechanistic understanding of how this in principle would work in treatment of obesity. But we believe that by inhibiting by using a TRPV1 antagonist, we could potentially inhibit the nervus vagus, which is also a very important nerve that signals to the brain whether you're hungry or not. So we believe we could have sort of a decreased appetite, but we also believe we could actually expedite or sort of like increase energy expenditure, which in turn, hopefully, would generate more lean body weight loss, if we can say so. So you retain muscle mass, but you lose more fat mass. With GLP-1 analogs, it's about 40% muscle mass and 60% fat mass you lose. So it's quite a substantial amount of muscle mass that you lose. And I don't want to spend too much time talking about our old diabetes data. We have some data to suggest we can improve insulin secretion. We can potentially reduce the risk of developing heart failure. These are all very interesting data that pharma are very happy to see because it shows them that this drug could potentially work. But they all tell us the same. Great, you've made it this far, but now we need to see some weight loss data. So like I mentioned before, that's what we're setting out to do soon. We also had the nice sort of trend for reduction on HbA1c, which is long-term blood sugar, and we also had an improved glucose response. So it's pointing in the right direction. We just need to up the dose, and we need to now assess it in a pure obese population as well. We have a great scientific advisory board with some really big shots. Jens-Juul Holst, for example, he was the one who actually discovered the GLP-1 hormone. So he's a very, very famous character in the scientific scene, and the rest of these people on the scientific advisory board are also very good at helping us in navigating this very fun and interesting field. Small management team with myself, our Swedish CFO Hampus, and our chairman and founder Dode. We are very tightly knitted, but it's actually going very well, I think. The board of directors, Dode, together with Richard, Julia, and Lasse, they all have experience from dealing with large organizations. They are also, especially Julia and Lasse, have a lot of experience in taking drugs from mid-stage to actual marketing. So they've been in Novo Nordisk, Lilly, and Sanofi, and actually been in this space where they've managed to take products to market. So I know everyone's talking about stocks and stock performance, and it goes without saying that obesity as a segment was really hyped up last year. I think the Swedes actually got to know a little bit too late, perhaps. So there's been a little bit of a correction over the past 6 months or so. But this appears to be sort of sector-wide. So for us in PILA, I mean, we're of course never happy to see our stock go down, but at least we can say that we're not the worst among most of these companies in this space. It may be a little bit hard to tell who's who, but on this slide we see that it's ourselves, and then it's Eli Lilly, Novo, Zealand Pharma, Viking, and Gubra. So it's sort of similar players that we would like to measure ourselves up to. We're, of course, a lot smaller. These guys are all large cap, but again, it's indicative for us that it's not as bad as some would say. And I firmly believe that now we were going to see a rebound because this market is simply too big for these companies to not be profitable on. So with that, I would just round off with, again, reminding you of this first-in-class opportunity for a very, very big unmet medical need. We have an ambition now to build a really solid package based on data that could facilitate a partnership. We have a very unique asset based on a TRPV1 inhibitor, which is completely different than what everyone else out there are doing. And we have quite an experienced team with good scientific experts and if we can get things started, we could have quite a few interesting triggers for investors in the next 1 to 2 years. So with that, I think I'll call it off. And I went a little bit over time, but I think we can manage some questions.
Thank you for that presentation, Gustav. You have been the CEO of the company for just over a year now.
Yeah.
How has the first time been, and what have you focused on?
It's a roller coaster, I would say. If you check our stock development since I got on, it's been up and it's been down and it's been up, and I think it's been a very developing period for us as a company to mature, to understand what segment we're in, to maybe to redirect our focus a bit. Of course, previously our founder Dorte was both the CEO and she was running all the clinical development. So I am hopeful that I have been able to relieve her of some of the communication work and some administrative work that could thus, of course, enable us to progress in the clinic, which is ultimately what matters.
You have a business development strategy, and could you elaborate on this strategy? Are you talking to partners?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say normally, in recent years, when we go to partnering meetings, we would maybe get meetings with 3 or 4 companies that have an interest in diabetes and potentially in obesity. The last time we went now in March, we had, I think, 14 exclusively with big pharma. So there's a complete shift now in the perception of who's actually interested in this field. And I would say across the bar, they all found our project to be quite interesting, very diversified, very differentiated compared to what else is out there. There's a lot of deals coming from China with GLP-1 analogs, of course. So that really gives us a good sense of I would say comfort, but also it gives us optimism because we can sense that there's something to get here if we manage to get the right data. Of course, we also assess what are these companies' pipelines looking like. What products do they already have? What products are they in licensing? Are they looking to fill a gap in terms of do they have IP expiry on certain things? So this is something that we're increasing efforts with, of course, as we progress. And hopefully, in the end, we can engage in some good dialogues. We've already established the connections now. So I'm very happy with how we've actually come around with the BD efforts. Yeah.
What are the most frequently asked questions from potential partners?
It's always about, of course, the weight loss data. Do you have anything? And I think there's a lot of because it has not traditionally been seen as a metabolic target. There is a little bit of learning and understanding with the BD people that you meet with, right? So of course, it's also you only have 30 minutes to meet these people and sort of convince them that this is interesting enough to take further. Then there's of course the patenting situation. Are you intending to patent this exclusively for this disease? Could you potentially combine it to strengthen the IP situation of multiple different products? I would say what we've heard is that if we can showcase obesity data, then the IP situation can be solved. Of course, these guys have the capabilities and the money to get around certain things. So we just focus on the most important parts, and that is to generate the data that they're asking for, and that's weight loss.
You have moved forward with a clinical trial application for a phase 2A study in obesity.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on this?
So it's actually in I would call it in diabetes, but patients, of course, living with obesity and diabetes. This is still in process, I would say. With my acknowledgements today that we want to make a bet on obesity, it's not because we're going away from diabetes as a whole, not at all. We want to make it as a parallel track where we assess whether this could potentially be something that could get us quicker to data that could be pivotal. So it's still being planned. We sent out a press release in end of April to disclose that we had been in contact with the authorities, and we had decided to move ahead with sending in the application as soon as possible. So that's unfortunately still what we are. So I can't actually disclose much more, but I can assure you that we're working very hard on getting things done.
Your cash position right now is not the strongest. Are you looking to start the study anyway? And maybe
do you know our cash position?
If it was 5 million by year end at 24.
Yeah. So by year end. So of course, I mean we only have we only have half year reports. So that of course means that it's a bit tricky for me as well as for everyone else to judge what our cash position is. But it goes without saying that we're continuously looking at how we can make sure that we can actually finalize the studies that we're communicating to the market. And I would say we do find a lot of investment interest in this particular field. Of course, now it's nice to see that Sweden is waking up to the obesity segment, but in Denmark specifically, we've managed to generate quite a lot of interest, which I think is promising.
There has been some extremely large deals, as you showed, and even with preclinical compounds, where companies have been doing combined studies with their compound plus semaglutide, for example. Is that something you have looked into also?
I mean, we've discussed it, yes, but we haven't actively moved on it yet, I would say. And I think what you say is very true. I mean, nowadays you see just preclinical phase 1 data actually moving the needle for quite a few companies, and equally so, it can also move the share price of some of the very big guys. So it is, of course, something that we are looking to understand. I think for now we want to assess whether the molecule on its own can generate a weight loss. If it can, then we can start to dream about what can it be combined with to make the most potent combination treatment.
Super. And a final question, where do you see the company in 2 years' time?
I would hope that we've managed to actually come around and generate some data and be bought off, or potentially have a big partner to continue running with. But that being said, I mean, it's a tough market out there. Companies are also sitting on a ton of cash, and they prefer to wait until phase 3 data often. So it needs to be something that is very potent and very different, I think. And I think we're in a good position for that.
Thank you for coming, Gustav, and good luck ahead.
Thank you, Philip.